Pilgrim's Progress, Part 2. The name of the slough was Despond. Here, therefore, they wallowed for a time, being grievously bedaubed with the dirt, and Christian, because of the burden that was on his back, began to sink into the mire. Pliable. Then said Pliable, "Ah, neighbor Christian, where are you now?" Christian. "Truly," said Christian, "I do not know." Pliable. At this, Pliable began to be offended, and angrily said to his fellow, "Is this the happiness you've told me all this while of? If we have such ill speed at our first setting out, what may we expect between this and our journey's end? May I get out again with my life, you shall possess the brave country alone for me." And with that, he gave a desperate struggle or two, and got out of the mire on that side of the slough, which was next to his own house. So away he went, and Christian saw him no more. Wherefore Christian was left to tumble in the slough of despond alone. But still he endeavored to struggle to that side of the slough which was farthest from his own house, and next to the wicket gate. The which he did, but could not get out because of the burden on his back. But I beheld in my dream that a man came to him whose name was Help, and asked him what he did there. Christian. "Sir," said Christian, "I was bid to go this way by a man called Evangelist, who directed me also to yonder gate, that I might escape the wrath to come, and, as I was going there, I fell in here." Help. But why did you not look for the steps? Christian. Fear followed me so hard that I fled the next way and fell in. Help. Then said he, "Give me thine hand." So he gave him his hand, and he drew him out, and set him upon sound ground, and bid him to go on his way. Then I stepped to him that plucked him out, and said, "Sir, wherefore, since over this place is the way from the city of destruction to yonder gate? Is it that this plat is not mended, that poor travelers might go thither and more securely?" And he said unto me, "The miry slough is such a place as cannot be mended. It is the descent whither the scum and filth that attended conviction for the sin do continually run, and therefore is called the slough of despond. For still, as the sinner is awakened by his lost condition, there arises in his soul many fears and doubts and discouraging apprehensions, which all of them get together and settle in this place, and this is the reason of the badness of the ground. It is not the pleasure of the king that this place should remain so bad. His labors also have, by the direction of his majesty's surveyors, been for about these 1600 years employed about this patch of ground, if perhaps it might have been mended. Yea, and to my knowledge, said he, here have been swallowed up the least 20,000 cartloads, yea, millions of wholesome instructions, that have at all seasons been brought from all the places of the king's dominions. And they that can tell say they are the best materials to make good ground of the place, if so be it might have been mended. But it is the slough of despond still, and so will be when they have done what they can. True, there are, by the directions of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps, placed even through the midst of this slough. But at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen. Or, if they be, men through the dizziness of their heads step aside, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there. But the ground is good when they are got in at the gate. Now I saw in my dream that by this time Pliable was got home to his house. So his neighbors came to visit him, and some of them called him a wise man for coming back, and some called him a fool for hazarding himself with Christian. Others again did mock at his cowardliness, saying, "Surely, since you began to venture, I would not have been so base to have given out for a few difficulties." So Pliable sat sneaking among them, but at last he got more comfortable, and then they all turned their tails and began to ride poor Christian behind his back. And thus much concerning Pliable. Now, as Christian was walking solitary by himself, he espied one far off, come crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name that met him was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man, then, meeting with Christian, and having some inkling of him, for Christian's setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Mr. Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him, by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans, and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. Worldly. How now, good fellow? Whither away after this burden manner? Christian. A burden manner indeed, as ever I think poor creature had. And whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me. For there, as I am informed, I shall be put into a way to be rid of my heavy burden. Worldly. Hast thou a wife and children? Christian. Yes, but I am so laden with this burden that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly. Methinks I am as if I had none. Worldly. Wilt thou hearken to me if I give thee counsel? Christian. If it be good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. Worldly. I would advise thee then that thou with all good speed get thyself rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the blessings which God hath bestowed upon thee till then. Christian. That is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden. But get it off myself I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore, I am going this way as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden. Worldly. Who bid thee go this way to be rid of thy burden? Christian. A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honorable person. His name, as I remember, is Evangelist. Worldly. I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that into which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find if thou wilt be ruled by his counsel. Thou hast met with something as I perceive already, for I see the dirt of the slough of despond is upon thee. But that slough is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on in that way. Hear me, I am older than thou. Thou art like to meet with, in the way which thou goest, wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and, in a word, death and what not. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies. And why should a man so carelessly cast away himself by giving heed to a stranger? Christian. Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than all these things which you have mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, if so be I can also meet with deliverance from my burden. Worldly. How camest thou by the burden at first? Christian, by reading this book in my hand. Worldly, I thought so, and it has happened unto thee as unto other weak men, who, meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions. Which distractions do not only unman men, as thine, I perceive, have done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures, to obtain they know not what. Christian, I know what I would obtain. It is ease for my heavy burden. Worldly, but why wilt thou seek ease this way, seeing so many dangers attend it? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add that, instead of these dangers, thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and content. Christian, Sir, I pray open this secret to me. Worldly, why, in yonder village. The village is named Morality. There dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man and a man of very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge, he hath done a great deal of good this way. Aye, and besides, he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go, and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it, to speak on, as well as the old gentleman himself. Therefore I say, thou mayest be eased of thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee in this village, where there are houses now standing empty, one of which thou mayest have at a reasonable rate. Provision is there also cheap and good. And that which will make thy life the more happy is, to be sure there thou shalt live by honest neighbors, in credit and good fashion. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if this be true which this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice. And with that he thus further spake. Christian, Sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? Worldly, do you see yonder high hill? Christian, yes, very well. Worldly, by that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got now hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was next, the wayside did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture further, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore he stood still, and wotted not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than while he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire out of the hill that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here, therefore, he sweat and did quake for fear. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. And with that he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist, what dost thou here, Christian? Said he, at which words Christian knew not what to answer. Wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist further, Art thou not the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? Christian, yes, dear sir, I am the man. Evangelist. Did not I direct thee the way to the little wicket gate? Christian. Yes, dear sir, said Christian. Evangelist. How is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside? For thou art now out of the way. Christian. I met with a gentleman as soon as I had got over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden. Evangelist. What was he? Christian. He looked like a gentleman, and talked much to me, and got me at last to yield. So I came hither, but when I beheld this hill, and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand, lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist. What said that gentleman to you? Christian. Why, he asked me whither I was going, and I told him. Evangelist. And what said he then? Christian. He asked me if I had a family, and I told him. But said I am so laden with the burden that is on my back, that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist. And what said he then? Christian. He bid me with speed to get rid of my burden, and I told him it was ease that I sought, and said I am therefore going to yonder gate to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, in short, not so attended with difficulties as the way, sir, that you sent me in. Which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, and turned out of that way into this, if haply I might soon be eased of my burden. But when I came to this place, and beheld things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said, of danger. But I know not what to do. Evangelist. Then, said Evangelist, stand still a little, that I may show thee the words of God. So he stood, trembling. And we'll pause here, and we'll continue with the story in the next video. Please like, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.